views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hi, and welcome to Open BXRX Tuesday, a weekly program providing you the latest information, resources, services, and community efforts taking place locally here in the Bronx and virtually. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, and today is Tuesday, August 10th. Coming up, as COVID-19 cases increase due to the Delta variant, nurses ramp up for yet another surge of patients at already short-staffed hospitals. Traveling nurse Narelia shares her thoughts from the front lines. Then, in a 165-page report, Attorney General Letitia James has concluded that Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed multiple women in violation of state and federal law. What's next? We'll discuss this and more with Assemblymember Kenny Burgos. After that, the Department of Sanitation's voluntary curbside composting program for food scraps and yard trimmings returns this month. Learn more about the importance of composting and recycling your food scraps up next. After that, we'll learn how ID Studio Theater supports artists and the community through their summer programming and Bronx Way a Bailar events in our borough. So please, stick around. Open BXRX Tuesday starts now. Welcome to Open BXRX Tuesday on BronxNet. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, and I'd like to invite you to get social with us at BronxNet TV on Instagram and Twitter, and BronxNet Community Television on Facebook. As COVID-19 cases increase due to the Delta variant, our healthcare heroes, our nurses, ramp up for yet another surge of patients in the ICU. How is one nurse mentally and physically preparing for this impending surge? Joining us now to discuss is traveling nurse Narelia Oliveras-Arzuaga. Welcome, Nurse Nare. Thank you for joining us. Always nice having you.
Hi, Sándie. Good morning. It's great to be back with you, ladies.
Good morning. So how are you and your colleagues preparing mentally and physically to handle surges of cases again a year after COVID-19 first hit the ICUs last year?
Well, Sándie, you always have such intense questions. That's very loaded, of course. And there's lots of layers to that. I think that the way we prepare is by, banding together the way we did the first time that COVID hit. And kind of looking towards our nursing community to give us support, the support that's been lacking from our healthcare system overall. And I think that looking towards social media and the communities that we have built on social media has been a huge source of just strength for us, of continued inspiration when it seems like there's very little hope. When we see such devastating and tragic cases as are seen in our sickest patients in the ICU, we need that kind of mental break and that support that we find amongst other nurses. So I really think that that's the way to get it done, and just to go back to our basic core beliefs and remember why we started our nursing journey, and remember that the reason why we do this job is to do exactly this, is to care for our sickest patients and step up when we are called to.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Nurse Nare. I know that offline we were talking about you possibly going to help with the surge happening in Florida. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And also, what can we do to avoid such a huge surge like what's going on over there in Florida right now?
Sure. I think definitely it's safe to say all eyes are on Florida right now, and it's for a good reason. When we know that 1 out of every 5 new COVID cases is in one particular state, we need to turn our resources there, and we need to look at what's happening there and understand why this variant, which we know is extremely highly transmissible and has turned out to be very deadly, why that's rising there. And so what's happened in Florida is it's a mixture of things. It is the fact that the vaccine has been politicized. And so because of that, there are lots of people that are eligible for the vaccine that have not received it. Right now, according to recent statistics, 1 out of every 8 Floridians who was eligible for the vaccine has chosen not to receive it. That means about 50 to 58% of Floridians are vaccinated, leaves a lot of people at risk. And so that coupled with the fact that Florida has such beautiful weather, that we are now in the summertime, a lot of unvaccinated people are also choosing not to wear masks in public places. And so the combination of those two things has led to an incredible surge of a even stronger variant of the COVID virus. And so they're now the nurses over there in the healthcare system is left really grappling with this new surge. And it's really difficult for them right now. Florida hospitals are really overwhelmed. ICUs are really overwhelmed. It's like we've gone full circle again, right back to where we were in the beginning. And it's truly sad.
It definitely is. And I've read also, Nurse Narelia, that hospitals are short-staffed and lacking nurses for many reasons. What does this mean for nursing, and why is this happening from your experience working, at the height of the pandemic last year?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. Yes, hospitals are, like I said, they're really struggling right now. The reason why they're struggling with issues such as staffing and not having adequate nursing staff to care for the ever growing number of patients is because lots of nurses decided to leave the bedside after the pandemic. They felt extremely undervalued. They felt very unsafe. A lot of nurses and healthcare workers also became sick with COVID, and then had to deal with bringing that potentially home to their families, and dealing with also just being ill with the COVID disease, which is in itself incredibly scary. So I think that all those things combined have led to what we call mass exodus of nurses at the bedside. And it's understandable, but it's also really scary because now look what's happened in Florida. There's new needs, and now who's left to care for these patients? So what happens, most hospitals end up relying on travel nurses and end up spending so much money to be able to fill those needs. And so there's just so much expenditure. And ultimately, as much as I love being a travel nurse, it doesn't help the patients because there's so much money that's spent. It becomes a crisis, an emergency type of situation, as opposed to having staff nurses there that are used to the system and that are just ready to handle the surge of patients. You now end up having a crisis. And so it's difficult. It's really difficult to deal with for the patients, for us travel nurses, for the hospital. It's just a lot.
It really is difficult, and we appreciate you for being so vulnerable about this topic. It's something that we don't talk about often in the media, the overwhelm that nurses are feeling after, an entire year of being called healthcare heroes, and now you're feeling kind of, just abandoned almost, right? So Nurse Narelia, for those who don't know, nurses do much more, obviously, than just draw blood and check charts all day, right? Can you share the impact of nurses' work, especially during the pandemic?
Sheesh, where do I begin? I think the impact of our work, you can't measure it. There is no bar. There is nothing that we have not done during the pandemic. I think, there's all this hierarchy in healthcare, right? The doctor does this, the nurse does this job, and, the tech do these jobs. And I think that during the pandemic, all that has gone out the window. So there is nothing that we don't do. There's nothing that we haven't seen, that we haven't done, everything from, clean patients to help maintain their ventilator going, to hold their hand as they're passing, to call family members via FaceTime who can't come and see them and let them know what's going on. There's nothing that we have not done and have not seen. And if we've learned anything from 2020, it's, 2020 was the year of the nurse. And, it truly was in every way, shape, and form. And I think that if we didn't realize how important nurses are based on all of this, then we've learned nothing, and I don't think that that's true. I think that the world has taken notice. It's sad that certain healthcare systems still haven't caught up, but that's because of financial reasons, obviously. it benefits them to not give us the importance that we deserve, because that means they would have to pay us more, obviously, and respect our time and not put us in unsafe situations. But yeah, if you value profits over people, that's what's going to happen.
Unfortunately, that is the truth. And thank you for breaking that down as well. So can you share, because I know a lot of nurses in the Bronx, there's a lot of people that feel overwhelmed still, even a year after, and like you said, have turned to other avenues in order to make funds because of the overwhelm. Can you share how lack of self-care and lack of balance while caring for others affects nurses like yourself, especially during these tough times?
Oh, absolutely. There's no way that it doesn't catch up to you, as it's not about being strong. It's about being human. And there's no way that seeing all of this does not affect you. I think right now an overwhelming feeling has been frustration. And I don't think that was something that was happening before. I think more it was, devastation before. I think it was sadness. I think it was anger. But I think frustration comes to mind as a big emotion for us because there's lots of, reasons to be frustrated at healthcare systems that aren't resourcing us properly, frustrated at people that are refusing to take the vaccine and then end up incredibly ill. I see on social media every day nurses talking about how they can't, they are, how do I say this? There's limits to modern medicine. And so we are frustrated by the fact that we know that people may pass and that there's limits to what we can do for them. I see everyday nurses, especially in Florida and places like Missouri and places that have been really hard hit right now, that they're seeing patients crying at the last moment and struggling to breathe, and they're using their last breaths to be able to say, "Can I get the vaccine now?" And I haven't seen that myself, but I cannot imagine how difficult that must be. It makes my hair stand on end. It breaks my heart. Stories of labor and delivery nurses. Labor and delivery nurses have been huge right now. They're actually delivering via cesarean section under like babies that are not full term yet because they have to intubate moms. And so, like I said, I saw it, I dealt with it a year ago. I can't imagine. Like, I can't. You think you're prepared and I want to go help, but even thinking about it now, it's like, you just know how difficult it's going to be. There's a lot of bracing, I'm going to have to do a lot of bracing myself to see what's coming next. It's so difficult.
It's one thing to hear about it, but it's another thing to actually experience it firsthand. And, that's something that a lot of the population hasn't been able to witness. So they don't understand the capacity of like how much this affects a person. Before we go, nurse, I wanted to ask just, here in New York City, we're preparing to welcome children back to school. What is the best advice you can give to parents and, just adults and children to protect ourselves from this surge that's happening due to the Delta variant?
Yeah, well, I definitely think that, there's lots of questions. What's, for the future, basically, what is coming next? Things change every day. I think that parents need, first of all, I commend parents, I have to say, for just dealing with everything that they've had to deal with. I'm not a parent myself. I can't imagine how scary it must be to have your kid out in the world at this point. Because of so many things that are happening right now. But parents, definitely the best thing you can do is pay attention to what's happening in your area. Pay attention to what your local health authorities are telling you. Sometimes things are not appropriate at like a state level. For example, like in New York City, Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio have had really different views on how to handle lots of things regarding the pandemic. So, but I definitely think that's something that Governor Cuomo said the other day was really smart when he said, pay attention to what your local health authorities are telling you, because they're going to be the ones that know what's happening at the district level. So keep in touch with current events. Keep talking to your school authorities as well. We have to put pressure, I think, on the Board of Education to protect our children. I think there's no question about that. Just like we look towards our local government to protect us as citizens. I think we have to look at the Board of Ed to protect our students going back to school. It's definitely going to be respiratory season that's coming up in September. Lots of colds. The weather is going to get cooler, so people will be inside. I definitely think that there's going to be lots of challenges ahead.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nurse Nadia, for your time and for your expertise on this topic. And take care. Be safe out there.
Of course. Thank you so much, Sándie.
Of course. We're taking a quick break. We'll be right back here on Open BXRX Tuesday.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting
to the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet, this is Trans.
Welcome back. In a 165-page report, Attorney General Letitia James has concluded that Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed multiple women in violation of state and federal law. What is next? Lawyers representing the women and a growing number of New York state legislators all agree that Governor Cuomo must resign. One of those state legislators joins us here today. Welcome, Assembly Member of Assembly District 85, Kenny Burgos. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Sándie.
Of course. So, Assemblymember Burgos, you joined a growing list of legislators calling for Governor Cuomo's resignation. What were your thoughts as soon as the AG's report came out?
The report was damning. To be quite honest, I don't even think I believed that it would be as damning as it was. But the Attorney General said unequivocally that the governor sexually assaulted multiple women of his staff and of his team and committed crimes, federal and state.
And now, between now and the time that this show airs, many things may change, but what would it mean if the governor resigned today? What would happen next, and who would take his place as governor?
Well, if the governor resigns today, the lieutenant governor, Kathy Hochul, would immediately assume the position of governor of New York and finish out his term.
Thank you for that. And Governor Cuomo, of course, continues to deny any wrongdoings even after the report was released, and even released his own attorney's report. What would happen if he doesn't resign?
Well, if the governor doesn't resign, the assembly has the constitutional power in New York to move forward impeachment proceedings. Now that's going to be up to the Assembly majority of Democratic Assembly members and also the Speaker. We're in conversations now to see how we're deciding to move forward. We do have our own investigations separate and apart from the Attorney General. So right now it's still an ongoing conversation.
Right. I definitely wanted to ask about that investigation by the Assembly. I know that back in March, the New York State Assembly and Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie announced a plan to launch an investigation that could pave the way for a possible impeachment, of Mr. Cuomo. Can you tell us a little bit more about this investigation? I know you said that it's in talks, but what were the procedures back in March and up till now?
So our investigation is still ongoing. It's being handled by the Assembly's Judiciary Committee. But our investigation is a bit broader, whereas the Attorney General's investigation was into the sexual misconduct and sexual harassment in the office. Our investigation expands upon that with also the $5 million the governor made from his book deal, with the COVID-19 scandal, with the nursing home data, and also some information on the Mario M. Cuomo bridge in regards to its integrity, the bridge's integrity.
Got it. Thank you for that, Assembly member. The Attorney General also added that they found Cuomo and his senior staff retaliated against at least one accuser who was a former employee as well. Is there a concern that the governor can use his power, influence, and intimidation to get out of this case entirely too?
That's always been a concern, unfortunately. It's something we've seen in the past. It's something that is pretty much well known in the political sphere. I don't believe at this moment there is much retaliation he can do. As the report is concluded, we have data, we have information, we have eyewitness reports, we have emails. There's so much information now at our disposal. I'm not really sure if any retaliation efforts would even benefit him.
Assembly member, I wanted to bring up your tweet from the day of when the report was released, of course. So you mentioned that these actions have no place in politics or anywhere else. And you reiterated, of course, your call for the governor's resignation. Just tell me a little bit more about, how this is also a violation of state and federal law. Obviously, it would be illegal then, no?
Yeah, it's a crime. I mean, at the end of the day, sexual harassment and sexual misconduct is something that the New York State Legislature has put at the forefront on things we wanted to change in Albany and for New York State. But it's also a federal crime, and it has been for a long time. And these are the words from the Attorney General, not myself. So the fact that she's concluded that with her investigators, with her team of lawyers, I think it's clean and clear to know that he has committed a crime and is no longer fit for office.
In your opinion, what does this all mean for women in general and the state of politics in New York City, not only for politicians, but for the people of New York City as well?
It's difficult. My heart goes out and I sympathize with women who have, experienced this sort of abuse, women who work in these abusive spaces. It creates a very, very complicated work environment, unfortunately, but this is why we have to call these things out. This is why we have to kind of dismantle this kind of culture and create a much more, comforting and open and inclusive space for everyone.
And how exactly can we do that moving forward? How should people in power positions like the governor do better? And, what can happen next?
Well, one, we can start by, not committing these egregious acts. We do have sexual harassment trainings that are mandated by state law. I take them, my staff takes them, and everyone in New York State takes them. So we can start with, increasing those trainings, maybe increasing how often we take them. But also, again, it comes down to calling it out when it happens. So even someone as powerful as the governor of New York, by handling a situation like this just sends a message to everyone that this will not be tolerated. This is not acceptable in the workplace and not acceptable anywhere, frankly.
Right. Assembly Burgos, I also know that President Biden also joins the calls out for resignation of Governor Cuomo and so do a few other people as well, including Nancy Pelosi. Can you tell me just about, what power does the president have in terms of removing a governor out of office when something like this happens?
Well, the president actually has absolutely no power in terms of official power for removing the governor from office, to my knowledge. But the president of the United States is the leader of our party, the leader of the Democratic Party, and I think him speaking out sends a big message. That even whether you're in the Democratic Party, same party as us, we will not tolerate this sort of sexual harassment. So the president speaking out on this, I think, sends a huge message. But as far as official power, the official power lies within the Assembly right now.
And if that investigation by the assembly does go through and, people look into it and the governor, takes that into the governor's office, takes that into account, is there, any way that he can also get out of that as well? Can he just say deny allegations again and, stay in his seat as governor?
So impeachment proceedings in New York are a bit different than we're used to on the federal level, whereas, Donald Trump was impeached twice, but continued to be our president until the end of his term. If we were to file impeachment proceedings in the state of New York with the assembly, the governor would immediately no longer be the sitting governor of New York. It would be Kathy Hochul, but then he would go to trial. So this would be, a normal criminal trial that we're used to seeing on TV or any sort of entertainment, but it's not entertainment. This is an actual trial. And if the governor's, with his team of lawyers and our lawyers somehow is found not guilty, then he'd be found not guilty. If he's found guilty, then he is. But this essentially just removes him from office immediately as an impeachment trial.
Right. And before we go, Assemblymember Burgos, just a message to Bronxites as well. During these times, there's so much turmoil when it comes to politics, and there's so much going on. What can you tell Bronxites at this time?
What I'll tell Bronxites is, I know it can be difficult to try to digest news that comes day in and day out, and this can feel political or not, but this is not political. This is really just speaking out against sexual harassment. This is about speaking against violence in the workplace, power plays, and that's what we really want to fix, that kind of culture, and take it as such. So I ask Bronxites to look at this thoroughly, take a look at the report and really check out the details of the story, because unfortunately this is, us calling out sexual harassment in the workplace, and this kind of behavior is unacceptable in New York.
Right. I think it's very important to note that, this is public information. It's available online for everyone to read and take a look at for themselves. So thank you for bringing that up, Assemblymember Burgos. Since we have you here, I want to take advantage and talk a little bit about the vaccination mandates that recently came out as well. Could you tell us a little bit about what this means for New Yorkers and people who are not vaccinated?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we have people, a group of people who have been very hesitant to get the vaccine for one reason or another. And I've been doing my best, to speak with people and, try to address their concerns. I know there are many concerns, but unfortunately, I think we're going to be moving to a space where we're going to have a lot more mandates, whether from the private sector or like we've seen from, city employees and state employees. And I think, unfortunately, we will reach a point where it will be very difficult to kind of live your life in New York State or New York City without having a vaccine. I urge to New Yorkers and Bronxite that this really is for the benefit of everyone. This is for us to truly, truly end this COVID pandemic. Otherwise, we will live with a mass season. We will live with COVID on a year-to-year basis. And we have the power and technology and the science and ability to remove it. This really just comes down to the will of the people.
One more thing, what does this all mean for the budget, coming up? Is this going to halt it? The fact that the governor is currently in this situation. What's going to happen with that?
The state budget?
Yes.
Well, the state budget was passed a few months ago. So, I mean, we're not even in legislative session. So it shouldn't halt or really affect our state budget for the next year in any way, so long as this isn't dragged out. And I don't expect it to. So it shouldn't have any implications.
Thank you for breaking that down. And before we go, Assemblymember Burgos, just how people can stay in touch with you in your office and get in contact with you if they need anything at this time.
Yeah. So all my social media handles are at Kenny Burgos NY. So that's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And my email is burgosk@nyassembly.gov. So happy to help. Happy to direct people to whatever resources they need. If I can be helpful directly, I'm happy to do so as well.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for speaking to us about this very important, topic today.
Thank you so much.
We'll be right back here on Open BXRX Tuesday.
If you're struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311. That's 833-511-0311. Welcome back. Due to COVID-19 budget cuts last year, the Department of Sanitation's voluntary curbside composting program for food scraps and yard trimmings was suspended, but the program is finally back this month. Joining us now to share more is Andrew Hoyles, Senior Manager of Organics Outreach at the DSNY. Welcome, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So to start, for anyone who's not familiar, can you tell us what exactly is composting and why should New Yorkers participate in this process?
Sure. Well, composting is the natural breakdown of organic matter or food scraps, food soil paper, and yard waste. And in nature, this material breaks down into crumbly, organic, rich soil. And in the city, we actually collect organic matter or food scraps, food soil paper, and yard waste, and take it to our compost facilities. And we break it down naturally for the beneficial amendment that is compost.
Gotcha. Thank you, Andrew. And the compost derives from food scraps, no? So I wanted to know, how much do our food scraps and yard waste contribute to landfills in New York City, and what exactly is the impact of this?
Yeah, of course. So actually about a third of everything that New Yorkers throw away is organic matter. So if you were to take a representative sample of New York City's residential waste and divided it up into fractions, a third of it would be organic matter, food scraps, food soil paper, yard waste, stuff that we consider recyclable or at least compostable. And when that is sent to the landfill, it actually breaks down and contributes to greenhouse gases or climate change issues. New Yorkers also, when they put this material at the curb in black bags, that's rodent food, that's pest food, and it makes our neighborhoods dirty and unclean. So with composting, we're actually diverting that material to be beneficially reused, sort of like recycling. You recycle your metal can or your glass bottle, and then it's made into a new can or a new bottle. Composting, you're taking that compostable materials, the organic matter, and you're turning it into something that can grow new food or new vegetables, things like that.
So Andrew, if you can break down what can be recycled, what is considered, food scraps, or like what can we put into these bins?
Right. Well, if it grows, it goes is our little catchphrase. Anything that's food scraps that you used to eat yourself. So, the apple, you have the apple core. The banana, you have the banana peel. The onion, you have the onion skin. So all of that type of stuff is compostable. But also things like meat and dairy, bones, seashells, a crust of bread. And this could be stuff that has gone rotten in your refrigerator or starting to mold. Or it can also be stuff that you just didn't get a chance to finish eating, but you were going to have yourself.
Gotcha. So instead of putting it all together in one garbage bag, we can separate it. We can put it separately into another biodegradable bag and take it to a compost place. But now the fortunate news is that the DSNY's voluntary curbside composting program is back. How exactly does this program work?
So last week, we opened up our form at nyc.gov/curbside composting, and residents can sign up right there. They can also call 311 to sign up. And each month, we'll add new residents to receive curbside composting service. This is new this time around. We have to actually have folks sign up or opt in to be made eligible. And we're going to be able to ensure that there's enough material set out this way, that there's enough participants this way. So we're working with neighborhoods around the city to get signups, to ensure that they have service, and to be able to participate in the brown bin program.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And does the entire neighborhood, like let's say I live in a complex and I want my neighbors to be down with the new program, do I have to have them sign up as well, or can it just be one person in a building that can sign up for
That's a good question. So for buildings with more than 10 units, we actually need the building management to sign up as well. So that can be a building super, that can be the building owner. If it's a co-op or a condo, then it can be a member of that co-op or condo board. But if you live in a house that's 1 to 9 units, so a small apartment or even a single family home or a 2-family home, then the individual tenants can sign up for the service and be made eligible.
Got it. Thank you. And we're going to provide this information at the end, but can you just provide where we can find out more information about this?
Absolutely. You can find out all information about curbside composting at nyc.gov/curbside composting.
Perfect. And we have that link right below. You can also call 311 to find out more information. So Andrew, I know you mentioned that food scraps and, throwing them out on the curb can cause pests and, rats and things of that nature. And some may also have concerns about rats and mice with these bins. Are they pest proof? Is there
Yeah.
some type of barrier that they're protected with?
Right. So just to be clear, the waste that's put into the brown bins is no different than the waste that's going in the curb right now into black trash bags. The truth is that actually these brown bins are rodent resistant and have a latching lid. So burrowing creatures that are trying to chew through something like a bag, they won't be able to get through the brown bin. And that's why we, have this program to be able to deter rodents and pests to the neighbor that didn't sign up for the program. Instead, we're, trying to make neighborhoods cleaner, make neighborhoods more healthy by deterring rodents and pests through this program.
I mean, it sounds like a win-win for all of us. So maybe we should
Exactly.
sign up right now. Andrew, can anyone compost? How simple is it really?
So there are eligible service areas that are that we have this program for. You can see the map on nyc.gov/curbside composting. So you can sign up there. If you're not in an eligible service area, then you can participate in one of our food scrap drop-off sites. Food scrap drop-off sites are located around the city at farmers markets, at subway stops, and other public locations. There are 143 right now, and we're actually going to have 200 food scrap drop-off sites throughout the city. And we also, if you don't want to take your material to a drop-off, you can also compost at home in your backyard or indoors. And we have trainings and workshops on that as well. So in New York City, we feel that you can have an option for composting no matter where you live, either at the curb with the brown bin, at a food scrap drop-off location, or at your house or in the backyard.
That's great to hear. I remember I used to compost at my local drop-off site. It was on 149th and 3rd Avenue.
Okay.
So it was like heavily, traffic. There would be people coming out of their offices and their workplaces to drop off banana peels and such. And it was just a community effort. And I know having those drop-off sites also helps the community, become aware about composting and also, food scraps and what that can do to our community.
Good.
Yes. If you can share just the importance of participating in this program, Andrew, and motivate someone watching right now to participate. If they're thinking about it, but they're a little intimidated by the idea and not too sure about it, how can we learn more?
Sure, yeah. Give the program a try. It's a voluntary program, but know that you're helping keep New York clean and healthy by diverting, this recyclable material, food scraps, food and paper, from the landfill, and instead you're creating a beneficial product that's coming to your neighborhood, the finished compost, to create healthy street trees, healthy neighborhood parks, healthy gardens for your neighbors and your community. And also it's fun. I think that people, when they start composting, they're like, wow, this is actually something I can get the whole family involved in. It's something new that you can learn. And also it's, a way to cut down on your own waste. People, when they start composting, they're like, wow, I can't believe I used to throw out all this stuff that's actually beneficial. You can find out more all on our website, nyc.gov/curbside composting. The sign up there is live, and we're happy to have people sign up.
Very true. Thank you for that, Andrew. One more thing. I remember last year when I was composting, or 2 years ago, actually, my mom and I also were able to receive compost so that we can grow, plants and flowers and things. So that's like a soil replacement as well. Are you going to be doing compost giveaways too?
Absolutely, yeah. We'll be doing compost givebacks over the course of the year. We do them sporadically with community partners, but also we do planned events. And you can see where those events are located at nyc.gov/getcompost.
I know there's one more thing. How can we host a food scrap drop-off site? If there's a garden or, community organization or school who wants to host a drop-off site, how can we find out more about that?
So visit nyc.gov/host a drop-off. And you can actually host a drop-off at your community center, at your church or religious location. Your whatever community group you're a part of, as long as you can host the bin. A lot of times community gardens host them. That's where you can go to.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Andrew, for your joining us today and sharing more about the DSNY's curbside composting program. I have actually one more question. I'm sorry.
No
how
problem.
did the budget cuts also affect this program? And how is the DSNY feeling about having it back? And what's the importance of having this budget allocated to this program in particular?
Certainly, yeah. So when the program was cut, it was actually a really intense time for the city of New York, right? We were going through the initial aspects of COVID. People were at home, people were scared. One of the funny things was that because people were home, much more people were participating in our recycling and our composting programs while they were still running, because they were at home, they were cooking at home, they were putting the stuff right there. So when the program was canceled, we were all sad, but we also were, switched to work on emergency feeding efforts, which is critical for the health and safety of New Yorkers. Folks are really excited that the program's returning. We were also really surprised on Earth Day this year when the mayor announced that the program was returning, because we actually thought the program was going to be suspended throughout this year. So we're all really excited and ready to be getting back on this program. And a lot of New Yorkers are really excited because they were upset that they lost their composting option. People wanted to be able to divert their food scraps from the landfill and make compost by doing so. So people are really amped.
I'm amped too. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us and sharing more about this program.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Andrew Hoyles is the Senior Manager of Organics Outreach at the DSNY. Again, to find out more information about drop-off composting and also just participating in curbside composting, you can visit nyc.gov/curbside composting or call 311 for more information. We'll be right back here on Open BXRX Tuesday.
We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at BronxNet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet, this is Trans.
Welcome back. ID Studio Theater invites the Bronx community to celebrate arts and culture through Bronx Way a Bailar and more summer programming events throughout our borough. Joining us now to share more are Sándie Luna, Executive Director at ID Studio Theater, and Tammy Rodriguez Guzman, Public Health Fellow. Welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Of course. So to start, can you tell us about ID Studio Theater and your mission?
ID Studio has been around for almost 20 years now. We're going to be celebrating our 20th year anniversary next year, something to stay tuned for. And our mission has been to empower immigrant communities through the performing arts. And what's really important in this moment about what we do is that we're at the intersection of the arts and social justice due to our mission. And so that's who we are, that's what we've been doing, and that's what we're committed more than ever to continue doing.
Thank you so much, Sándie. And you recently held a wonderful, beautiful event called Bronx Way a Bailar at Roberto Clemente Plaza, right near where I live, actually. And I saw you both in person there. It was really nice seeing you and enjoying, the dancing and everything that happened. Can you tell us about Bronx Way and, just about the event?
Yeah, so Bronx Way was the first event in a series of events that we're going to have to honor Bronx culture and history. And so we partnered with Folklore Urbano and dancers Daniel Fetegua and Natalia Oregoiza to have a community event. And as you saw that Saturday, it kind of turned into a community celebration where, everyone was kind of cheering each other on, and community members were embracing each other and embracing their culture, because there is a large Latinx population and Caribbean population in the South Bronx. And so we really got to embrace our roots that day.
And yes, absolutely. I think we're very conscientious during this period that this has been a very challenging year, especially for our communities. So we don't forget that it's a time to celebrate our resilience, but also honor what we've been through and find ways forward together. And I think we can't forget that the arts are part of the way forward. And we're very lucky at ID Studio Theater that we have a beautiful musical director, Pablo Mayor, who's the band leader for Folklore Urbano. And they were the ones that you were able to move your body and soul to at that last event.
They sounded amazing, and the community was like getting up, dancing and everything. And I remember hearing that the band is from like all different parts of Latin America. Like they were announcing, one is from Cuba, another one is from Venezuela, another one's Puerto Rican. It's amazing, and it shows just how much of a melting pot, this community in particular is as well. So thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Can you also share the importance? Of course. Can you also share the importance of ID Studio Theater's dedication to supporting artists during this challenging year for arts and culture, especially?
Yeah, so I mentioned Pablo Mayor, and we also have our in-house choreographer, Daniel Fetegua, who's an amazing artist and has a production company. And we have a whole community of artists that we have been supporting. And emerging, burgeoning non-professional artists from the community that we continue to train through our community building theater workshop. And I think, to us, it's really important. I've said this before, and I will continue to say it as the pandemic started to emerge and we all started to realize how serious this was. Nobody knew what was happening. And as we started to realize what this was going to mean, and in the last year, one question that we have continued to ask ourselves is, what is the role of the arts? We cannot forget the arts. It's so easy to, because we go into survival mode, especially in our communities. We are the essential workers. We are the ones in the front lines. We are the ones who are heavily impacted. And so our artists, all artists, but particularly our artists, have this really important and beautiful job, which is to interpret this reality, to make it something bigger than the moment. They're able to process what we're going through in a way that elevates everyone's humanity. And so it's really important to us to give a platform to the artists who hold the voice of this moment and who are the ones who will interpret this moment. And we will look back and really understand what we've been through them.
That was so beautifully put. Thank you for that, Sándie. And it's very true. You know, arts mean everything for our communities. And that was shown in the way that the community received this event, you know, such a beautiful event, and the way that artists and the community connected through an event like this, especially after this tumultuous year that we've all gone through. So besides having events for the community and families alike, ID Studio has also had programming, especially for our youth. You know, our students are preparing to go back to school in September. They've been kind of, you know, stressed out with remote learning and locking in at home and everything like that. So can you share more about your Summer Arts Conservatory experience for our youth?
Tammy, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So we did this last year as well, and the year before. We have a Summer Arts Conservatory for children to train in dance, music, and theater, the performing arts. And it's taught by our artistic director, or assistant artistic director, Nelson Celis, and director, Jamie Venegas. And last year it was virtual due to the pandemic. And so this year we've had the opportunity to open in-person programming for the students. And so it's really great to have them be able to connect with other children in their neighborhood, because it has been a year where it's difficult for children to, you know, talk with friends, hang out with friends. I don't know about you guys, but I have a younger brother. And so I do feel for them and not being able to, you know, hang out with your friends in the way that, you know, we might have been able to in our youth.
That's so true. Thank you, Tammy. Tammy, I'm also curious about your role at ID Studio Theater as a public health fellow. Can you tell me about your role and also when you started working with them?
I started last June, almost at the height of the pandemic, and during a time where, you know, we were trying to figure out what is going to happen with the arts, because we did have a lot of programming available, but as things shifted from in-person to virtual, we had to re-navigate how we were going to distribute those programmings. And so I studied public health in college, and I love being able to combine what I studied in, you know, the typical traditional public health field and connecting that to the arts, because I think there's a real power that comes from that. And public health, you know, it deals with everything from housing to education to criminal justice, and being able to use the arts and the humanities to kind of connect that all together has been really powerful. And I see a lot of that coming to life with our community when we do these in-person events and we get to talk to people, and, you know, if something comes out of us when we're able to have these experiences together through dance and music. And so I'm really fortunate to be able to kind of create this new field of the arts and health.
That sounds like an awesome role and something I haven't heard about before. Like you said, you know, it's a new role that happened in June. So super important to be connected with the community when it comes to health and art as well. It's interesting to hear how those two are connected. So speaking of the community receiving these events, can you tell me a little bit more about, you know, how people have been feeling receiving these events and what you've been hearing out on the field, and also what your hopes are for future events in the community through ID Studio Theater?
The response has been, I still can't talk about the March event, which was our beginning of April. We were honored to be the one organization representing the Bronx during this 5-borough press conference to kick off the open culture program for New York City. But also it meant the first time that we were doing a performance outdoors and sort of gathering in community again. And I get chills every time I think about it, because, you know, I think for all immigrant groups, and particularly I am a Black Latina immigrant. I came to this country as a teenager, and arts is part of our culture. Like, we live and breathe the arts in everything that we do. It's the thing that we may not realize it, but gets us through so many moments, difficult moments in our lives, and allows us to retain a connection to where we come from. And so when we go out in our community, what we see is this recognition of people being seen for who they are and what they represent, and the joy that they have inside and their culture, and the value of coming together I think as a community, something that unites us is this value in family, community, doing things together. So doing these events has been really emotional, starting back with that event, because folks literally had tears in their eyes to be back together. And we had families with children. We had neighbors that we knew and neighbors that we didn't know. And at this last event, Bronx Way a Bailar, at Roberto Clemente Plaza, we had folks wait through the entire setup of the band, which is a 14 musician band. So it took a while, right? And they were like, what are you doing? And we're like, oh, so this is who we are and this is what we're doing. Join us, come back. And they're like, oh no, we're just gonna wait here.
Wow.
Hold on, I'm gonna call so-and-so to come, right? So there's a real need for that.
Absolutely.
And so what we've seen is we felt this really strong bond to the community, and everyone feeling seen and recognized for who they are beyond the pain of this moment.
Absolutely. Before we go, Sándie, I know people are tuning in and they're like, where can I go to find out about Bronx Way a Bailar? Invite us to your upcoming events. I know you have a few coming up.
Tammy, go for it. We have August 13th, more dancing.
Yeah, August 13th. It's a Friday, 6 p.m. at Brook Park. It's going to be Bronx Way en Comunidad.
Gotcha. And we have the flyer right here on screen. That's August 13th at 6 p.m. at Brook Park Garden. So don't miss it at ID Studio Theater, Bronx Way a Bailar. Thank you so much, Sándie Luna and Tammy Rodriguez Guzman, for joining us today and speaking about this amazing programming that you have going on.
Thank you. See you on the dance floor.
I will be there.
Well, that's all for our show today. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.